hello. Welcome to the Business Plugs Mixer. My name is Linda Murray Bullard, and they call me the Business Plug. And I am so glad you have tuned in. Go ahead and share it to your family, to your friends. Share it to all your business buddies who have board members. Share it to all your business buddies who have advisory boards. Today it's all aboard. We're talking about everything that you need to know about boards and business. Before we get to that, I want to tell you, I have a lofty goal of getting 124 businesses certified as minority and women owned. And if you fit either or both of those categories, I would love to help you get certified. Also, Alabama, I'm coming your way. I recently got certified to do business in the state of Alabama. So I'm working with governmental entities in the state of Alabama. Yay. So we're coming, Alabama. We're coming down there to do some certifications to get you all on board. Now that I've done all the housekeeping things that it's going to keep my team happy, I'd like to introduce you to spring and winter.
And winter.
And Winter's going to be the youngest person I've ever interviewed. So I am so happy. This is a historical moment on the plug, on the mixer. This is historical. This is historical.
Making history.
Yeah, we're making history. Winter is making history in this world right here. But her name already said it because she's going to be the storm. She's
gonna bring it, baby.
She's gonna bring the storm. She is. So Spring, tell them, who is Spring Richardson Perry?
Well, hello guys. That is me, Spring Richardson Perry. Who am I? That is a loaded question. So many things. Mom and wife, first and foremost, God-fearing woman, and all the things in between. So what do? I have a company called Time to Spring Forward, which is actually going through a rebrand because my husband and I have finally decided to join forces and do what we do together instead of separately. And so what that is helping nonprofits to thrive. So what I do is along the lines of organizational development. I help with strategic planning, with grant writing, fund development, governance, compliance, all the things that nonprofits need. And as I was doing that, especially when it came to the grant writing piece and we got to the finance part of it, I found that nonprofits were not in compliance financially. And so luckily, I have a wonderful husband who is a certified tax professional. He's getting his MBA in finance right now. And I would be like, babe, look, they need to get this grant, but their finances are not in order. Help me, help them. So that was always this back end piece that was happening. And so we've combined forces. And so what our business is called is Paid Thinkers. And he does his tax thing, which he's always done, but he helps nonprofits. Yeah. He helps nonprofits with their 990s.
I love it. She said, that's my dad. That's my
daddy. And that's what he does. But you'd be surprised, Linda, or not surprised, but it's surprising to me how many nonprofits are just unaware of how they should be doing their taxes, that their taxes need to be done. Just because you are tax exempt does not mean you do not file taxes. Right. So you still need to file. You may not have to pay anything, but that also depends on how much your organization made that year. Exactly. So there's all these different things that, as I was working with organizations, helping them get in order, that was one of the big pieces. And so I've always done a little bit of bookkeeping and just a little bit of accounting work, not much. But my husband does the heavy lifting of that stuff. So, so that's what we're up to now. We're
I love it. I love it. And so
together.
you and I talked about, because everything you said is on point, right? Because not helping nonprofits, and I do the same thing. I do grant writing, and the part that we always get stuck on when I'm dealing with businesses, nonprofit businesses, we go great through, their mission, their goals, their, introducing their company, all the good things, all the soft Philly things, right? Because most times they already have a program that they've been working on, and they can tell that to the world. So we get all the way to that, but the last part is the budget,
The money.
and that's where we get stuck. What, a budget? A budget? We need a budget?
What's
Like,
that?
what, huh? You know, and so yeah.
Yeah, it
So
gets
yeah,
really interesting.
but then
And
backing up before we can even get to the budget piece, getting them to talk and to educate me on their boards, like telling me who's on the board and what do they do, like having a board that's not hooking them.
so it's important to make sure that your board brings a diverse set of skills to the table, especially if you have a working board,
Mm-hmm.
um, which means that they're the ones. Girl, you are noisy today. Which means that they're the ones. I'm on a nonprofit board where we are a working board, so we are putting all the things together, putting all the things in place because we don't currently have employees yet. Because here comes that word, budget. We are still working that out. And so before we can start to hire people, we want to make sure that we have a solid financial structure so that we have the money for the salaries, but not just the salaries. When you start to hire people, you also have to consider those payroll taxes. You have to consider, are you going to offer benefits? What other things are you responsible for? You're responsible for workman's comp insurance, just business insurance in general. There's all these other things that go along with running a payroll.
Absolutely.
So, um, so all that to say, the board that I'm on, one of the boards that I'm on, we're a working board, and we do this. We're looking at this. We are actively doing things on a daily basis to get the organization in a solid place so that we set it up for long-term sustainability.
Mm,
And so it's really important that with boards like that, you understand the time commitment that is required of you, because that's another thing, is that I don't think people consider what capacity they have
mm,
to give to give effectively to the board.
right.
So yes, it sounds great to be on the board, but it comes with work. And so you need to really understand what you're getting yourself into before you actually commit to it, because you could be doing more harm than good by just taking up a space but not actually doing anything. And you could be a
Absolutely. And I always, guide them toward, find people in your circle who already have these assets before they get to the board, right? So it's easy as, you want somebody in marketing to be on your board as a part of your marketing efforts. You want somebody in finance to be on your board as towards your financial efforts. You want somebody in operations to be on your board to help make sure that your operations run smooth. Like looking in your circle, because a lot of times we have a network of people who say, "Oh, I want to be on the board. I want to be on the board," and then they get on the board and you never see them again. And so I try to teach them to make certain that their board members are actually actively contributing to the organization. And they do that
Mhm.
through, yeah, they do that through time, talents, and their money, right?
Right. And that's another thing I think people don't realize, is that some boards, especially if it's winter, girl,
She's playing.
especially if
She's
it's
fine.
if it's a nonprofit board, they may have a monetary requirement. So you may be required to bring in, say, $5,000. They
Hmm.
don't care how you bring it in. If you write them a check for $5,000, you fulfilled your duties. But if
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the ability to do that, then you need to know where you're going to go find $5,000. So
Absolutely.
those are things that you want to know before you commit to something.
Absolutely. And I think that's what happens when people are are investigating or researching to get their board members is like you need to know I've had groups of people who tell me, they tell me, at the nonprofit place we have here locally, they tell me I shouldn't have my nonprofit because my board members have no money. But here's the thing that I've learned in my own life about board members is you need to have access. Like more than money, your board members need to have access to whatever the needs of the board are, whatever needs of the organization are. And so getting them to think about that differently, not to discourage the nonprofit, because I had somebody who was geared to help nonprofits say, but everybody shouldn't be a nonprofit. The system itself will weed out the people who shouldn't be nonprofits. You can't be the judge and the jury and say, yeah, well, you can't have you, sir, can't have a nonprofit, and you, ma'am, you don't deserve one because you have no board with money. The process is tedious and it requires your consistency. And there are certain things that happen with a nonprofit that because it doesn't belong to any person, it belongs to the community. And so when you think of it in the whole right of what a nonprofit is and does, talk about how important it is to stay compliant to those things that nonprofits should already have in place.
So staying compliant is super important because you can get your nonprofit status revoked. And then if it is revoked, if your 501c3 status is revoked, then you can't go for grants anymore in terms of being a nonprofit. You can't the all of the things that the privileges that come with being a 501c3, you no longer have that. And so essentially you really can't do anything because you're not a for-profit business. You're registered as a nonprofit, but it's been revoked. So now you have to go back and either you have to become compliant or you have to start over. So at that
Yeah.
point, do we become a for-profit business or do we regroup and do something different or what? But it's super important. And I'm going to give you an example. There's an organization that had not filed their taxes in 8 years. It was a nonprofit organization and they want to go for grants. So the first thing I say is, okay, first of all, what is it that you do? And then I'm asking them, okay, let me see your paperwork. And so when I'm digging into the paperwork and I'm looking for the 990, first of all, 990 is public information. So it should be posted on your website.
Absolutely.
Um, but if it's not, you can easily go to the IRS website and access it. So as I'm searching, I don't see it. So I'm like, well, where's your tax information? Where's your 990? Oh, what's that? We're tax exempt, so we don't have to file. I said, that's not what that means. It means that you're not subject to the same tax laws as a for-profit business, but you still have to file taxes.
Absolutely.
So needless to say, um, in that instance, their 501c3 status had been revoked. So now they have to figure out what to do because they want to get grants, but you can't get grants until you go back and file each and every year. And you better
You have
hope.
to correct it. And that's the thing, right? Because they don't forgive you. You're penalized. I had a client that they were like, well, so I didn't do it last year. I didn't do it last year or the year before, but I think in 2021, somewhere around there. And I said, okay, before we can even talk about you getting grant money for this idea, you're gonna have to go back and make friends with the Secretary of State and the IRS. Like you have to go back and make friends and get your 501c3 back, your privileges back, if they give them back. And then you have to make sure that you filed all of those different penalties and the things that you haven't done, the reports you haven't provided. Like you have to bring all that up to date. And so it's not a point where, well, I'll just go for a for-profit business. I'll just take these assets and start. No, sweetie, those assets never belong to you. So you have to find a non. You have to get the IRS's approval to give those assets to another nonprofit because you don't get to carry them into your for-profit business. Like that's not how it works.
And I don't think people realize that. They
They
don't
don't. They don't.
realize they're going to say, "Oh, I want to start a nonprofit." Okay, great. You need to at least 3 people to get started, but realize that this is something for the community and it's not yours personally. And so if something happens, the dissolution of this has to be approved, and the money may not necessarily go back to you, even if you put it all in there in the first place.
Because it wasn't never yours. It
It
was
was
never
never yours
yours.
to begin with.
Yeah.
So, those are things that I don't think people realize. And again, nonprofits are a very, very important part of our communities
Absolutely.
because a lot of times they're bridging gaps in the community. So, like for instance, there's a nonprofit in San Antonio called Life Choices, and they have a medical clinic. They do prenatal care, they
Mm,
do STD testing, they
mm,
do internal medicine, and so and they provide these services at a low cost or no cost depending on your income, and it's on a sliding scale. They have these determination factors that they use, but they provide these services to the community that needs it. So if something happens to you, they're trying to be more proactive than reactive,
right,
so that you don't have to go to the emergency room and then get an emergency room bill, right?
right, right,
And then at that point, the hospital doesn't have to necessarily treat you if you can't pay. All they have to do is stabilize you. And
right.
there's so many ways to get around that if they feel like you can't pay.
Oh, I worked
So,
at an indigent hospital before, and so
mhm,
patient swapping, and they have a whole name for it, where you treat them to get them stable, and then you say go over to the indigent hospital to get your care, because they don't want to. The private hospitals don't want to foot those bills.
they don't want to foot the bill. So, again, these nonprofits are an important part of our communities and they
Oh yeah,
serve a purpose. But you have to be careful in the way that you manage it, if you want it to be successful.
absolutely, and that's the thing. When I'm glad we're talking about these things, but also we're talking about nonprofits, but it's the same thing for profit boards, right? Because I have some corporations out here who have board members who, and these partnerships that have boards and all these things, right? And so when you're talking about board governance, you're talking about period across the board, for profit or nonprofit, you still want your board to be compliant.
Yes, and you want to make sure that there's no conflict of interest on your
Yes,
board. And so
absolutely.
what that means is this, right? If you say for instance I'm an accountant, right? And I'm serving on a board, and if I'm serving in a treasurer capacity, great, because I'm using my accounting skills. But on that board, if it's not a paid board, right, then I should not be getting paid for my accounting services. That is going
Right,
to be a direct conflict of interest,
right.
if they're using me to do the audit and they're paying me, my firm, to audit their books, and I'm the treasurer of the board, which is not a paid board.
And that's
So
right. And that's just like, paying the cat to watch the meat house. Like,
yes.
no,
Yes.
we're not doing that. We're not
Yes.
doing that. And so it's
So
it's very you have to be above board, and you have
mhm,
to do things everything above the table because every dollar, every dime you as the administrator, as the executive, as the CEO, founder, whatever, you are accountable. And so when the IRS come, they come with the bracelets for you, your secretary, and your treasurer.
They're going to come for the board and they're going to come for the
Yeah,
executive director. And
yeah,
so once they get down to the meat and potatoes and they figure out who's responsible for whatever the non-compliance is or whatever the negligence is, and if it is a big non-compliance or a big negligence on their part, and they can't show a due diligence in trying to
exactly.
not be negligent, it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be
Absolutely.
a big problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's why it pays to be compliant. It pays to have board members that are more than just seat warmers. They're actually doing something to help. They're actually doing something to help the business prosper. And they have reach and access, right? They're reaching out in their communities and they're bringing in those resources that support the mission. And so that you can help do the work that you, as a business, have sworn to do. It's important that everybody will be on the same page, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the most important thing too, is that we are working towards the mission.
Absolutely. And the mission is, it's the whole purpose. When you start talking about why do we have this company? Why are we doing this thing? Miss Winter's ready for her interview. But it's we talking about exactly, Miss Winter. We need
She
to
said, I'm ready.
we need to keep them compliant, Miss Winter. I get it. I am you're so right. You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. We need to keep these people compliant out here in these streets so they don't get in trouble. Absolutely. I agree, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Such a cute board member.
Our
Yeah.
little honorary board member. But truly, Linda, this is why they call you or they call I in, and they call you in or they call me in to help them get compliant. And that's one of the things that I want nonprofits to do more of,
Hmm.
is to girl, is to figure out how to get back on track.
Absolutely. Because that's the thing, as long as you're willing to get back on track, like we can assist and tell you the things that you need in order to get back where you need to be. But you have to be willing. You have to, first of all, recognize that you may have just started a nonprofit out of desire and not out of knowledge. And so once you get the wisdom, wisdom, knowledge is one thing, and wisdom is actually applying that knowledge. And so once we help you to apply that knowledge, you can get back in the right frame of your business so that you can help the community. And there's things, I talk about different types of businesses, but there are, LLCs around the world who are trying to get grants. And the minute they ask them, well, where are your minutes? They don't have minutes. But as an LLC, you should have annual minutes anyway. If you have no if you have no other minutes. So I'm helping businesses get certified. And then we get to the part where they said they want minutes, your first minutes and your last two. And they're like, Miss Linda, what is that?
Yep. Yeah.
Miss Linda, what are minutes? Like I thought minutes was something they did in church. Like, well, they read them in the church meeting, Miss Linda. I've never read minutes in my business, but that's a part of it. Is like the things that you don't know can really become a stumbling block for getting to the grants and the funding the support that you need. And so helping businesses become compliant and stay compliant, like using your calendar to remind you to do all those different things, all those moving things that businesses need to do is important. And so that's that. I'm so glad you came, you and Miss Winter. I love Winter. Winter is a cutie. I love
Girl,
her.
she is a storm.
That I love Miss Winter. Miss London said, I have played on the floor enough. I'm ready for my I'm ready for my close up. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The youngest interviewer ever. Thank you, Miss Winter, for joining us.
I love it. I love it. So if there's one thing there's a YouTube, a TED Talk out there
Mhm.
by Dan Pallotta. Have you ever seen that?
I think so. The name sounds familiar.
So he has a TED Talk, but he also has a video. It's called Uncharitable, I think it's called.
Mm,
It is so good.
mm,
So good about nonprofits, about funding, and about shifting our mindsets
mm.
around nonprofits and what they're able to do financially. I would encourage you guys to watch that. I would
Absolutely.
encourage y'all to take a look at it um, because it'll really shift your mindset.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is being, things like board source. I always tell them go to board source because they're number one when you're talking about putting a board together. That's the authority, and then going to the Center of Nonprofits in DC, like that's a whole free connection that you can have to learn about how to keep your nonprofit compliant. And then locally, a lot of times cities have United Ways, and those United Ways are really good as far as resources to help support the nonprofits because what they do is, in addition to giving funding, but they also help nonprofits get structured. And then you have the community foundations that are in most big cities that can also help nonprofits get them structures. Those are free resources. If you are a for-profit business, you should be going to your local small business development center. The free resources can tell you how to get your boards up and running, how to get your business up and running, like all the free assets that are out there. Score.org is a magnificent national brand that helps businesses as far as if you're looking for somebody to help walk you through it, then they have mentors at score.org. So there's free resources everywhere. It's just plugging into those resources and then using them to help you to get your business to be compliant and for you to stay compliant and govern your business the way you should. I think it's all about willingness.
Yes. And so I will say that Washington, D.C. probably has the most intricate laws around nonprofits
Yeah.
than any other state I've seen. And so, because I remember we were trying to get one of them registered. They were in the DMV area,
Mm.
Maryland. They originated in Maryland, but they needed to also be registered in DC and Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
DC had the most complicated, uh, all these different steps, all these different offices that you had to get registered with, and all these different fees to go with it. Most
Of course.
states is you register with the Secretary of State, you get approved as a nonprofit or not, and then you go about your business. And you may
Right.
have to register like with the state revenue department or like the comptroller's office or something like that. And that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
DC had literally 3 or 4 steps. And I was just like, why, DC? Why? Why y'all doing all this? Y'all doing so much.
Yeah.
But I said that to say, make sure that you are registered appropriately to be able to run your programs
Absolutely.
in whatever state you're in.
Absolutely. That is very, very important. And you can go for the most part, you can go to the Secretary of State in your state. They're usually SOS dot whatever your state name initials are .gov normally. But then some states do have .coms behind their name. So whatever your state, uh, however your state registers businesses normally, go to your state's website and then it'll say doing business in the state of, like, I'm in Tennessee, doing business in the state of Tennessee. So you would go to the SOS. Well, here we have, I think here we have 10 Bear. I don't know why. We have TNBEAR. I don't know. I don't know. What am I doing? But that's the Secretary of State and 10 Bear are the places where you would go if you were in Tennessee. Make sure you go to the state's governor's page, like that whole site, because most of the information is wherever the governor's information is. But go there and look if you're going to open a nonprofit. in the state of Tennessee, they actually have a guidebook. And if you email me, I can email you the guidebook that the state of Tennessee uses and gives to people. But there are different ones that you can have, and each state has their own flavor. So just because they do things in Tennessee doesn't mean it's being done in Texas, doesn't mean it's been done in California. You have to, that's why it's important for you to go and find where your state's information is, and to act accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. Texas has a little guide, PDF too, is a couple of pages and it's
Mhm.
very helpful. Louisiana does not, but the small business center is very helpful in Louisiana.
Great,
So
great.
that one's good. But Tennessee, oh my gosh, your state is doing some great things right now, Linda.
Absolutely.
Y'all are expanding. Y'all are bringing more businesses in. Your economic development for the state. Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo. I love it.
I'll pass that on. I'll pass that on, but it's because we're doing a lot of things. Like we're becoming entrepreneur friendly, right? Whether that be for the nonprofit sector or the profit sector, for profit sector, we're becoming very friendly for entrepreneurs, and because of that, we are busting at the seams. Please don't move to Tennessee. We fool. We fool.
But I love to see it though. And Tennessee is beautiful. I've been to Memphis. I have not been to, well, I have been to Nashville, but it's been a long time. I haven't
Okay.
been there as an adult. But Memphis, I was there last year and it is just beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.
We have the mountains. So Nashville, like Nashville. In fact, we're at the foot of the mountain.
Oh,
So we're
wow.
at the foot of some mountain. Yeah. So I get to look up every day and see the lookout mountain out my bedroom window. But a lot of people that come here are impressed that we have a mountain in the city, which is really cool at times.
But y'all have the Four Seasons as well. And it's
We do.
so
We used
pretty.
to. Yeah, we used to. But now you can get all four of them in one day. So with the weather shift, with the
Global
weather
warming
shift,
is real, y'all.
it is real. We used to have the four seasons, and I used to brag about that. My brother that lived in Milwaukee would come down, and he was like, "I love down here because you get all four seasons." Well, we used to, but now we get all four in one day. And so now, but the thing about it is because we're in the valley, it doesn't stay cold too long. It doesn't stay anything too long. Like it's like right now last week we had, I think, 103, 108 temperature.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I know, but it doesn't stay like that. So we're now in the 90s, and next week probably be in the 80s, and then it'll, it's a whole cycle. But that's the thing um, is they say global warming isn't happening, but meanwhile, the weather's saying what the weather says.
Meanwhile, we're having
So
all
yeah,
these crazy hurricanes and tornadoes and tropical storms, and
in
it's
places they've
hot.
never been.
Yeah, in places they've never been. And then it's hot one minute, cold the next minute. And so it's, the weather's never been like that. So yes, it's very
That's
real.
absolutely, absolutely. There were two I saw in two cities last week that had snowstorms. And I'm like, we're in June and people are having snowstorms. But so yeah, yeah. You
Yeah,
just
that's
have to
hot.
know what's fake, what's facts and what's not. So whatever. But in any case, now that we have finished this, what one thing would you like my listeners to take away from this conversation?
So, if anything, I want you to take this away: compliance, compliance, compliance. If you don't know what that means or what that looks like for your organization, find somebody who does, because it will get you in a world of trouble. And it can be financial trouble, it can limit you in what you're able to do. And when you get in trouble with the IRS, that's three people you don't want to be in trouble with: the I, the R, and the S. I promise you. And so just make sure you're doing your due diligence. And then, like I said, I would really encourage y'all to watch Dan Pilata's TED Talk and his documentary he did, called Uncharitable, because it'll really shift your mindset in terms of nonprofits. And so I think those are the two main takeaways that I would take away from that. Oh, one more, a third one is board for your boards. Make sure you have people with diverse skill sets that can
Mm,
contribute effectively to your board. So for your treasurer, you might want to get an accountant or somebody who's good with numbers. For your
mm-hmm.
secretary, you may want to get someone with some good administrative skills. That might be a good idea. So just make sure you have the right people in the right place, because your board is essentially your steering committee. And so you want to make sure that they are effectively, steering you in the right direction for the long term.
Absolutely. Great, great information. My name is Linda Murray Bullard. They call me the business plug. You've just plugged into the Business Plugs Mixer. I'm here Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, talking, having business conversations about business with business people. Join us next week, 7 o'clock p.m. here on the Business Plugs Mixer. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Winter.